What's up? Welcome to another video. Today I want to showcase my favorite lens and focal range, and I'll tell you why I think it's perfect for travel photography and run and gun filmmaking. As a photographer, we have access to so many options, and we often tend just to bring everything and have an overly heavy camera bag. If I have limited space and if I have to choose one lens to go somewhere, I will almost always choose my 35mm prime lens. Over the course of the video, I'll give you a few arguments why that is the case, and in the end, I'll also show you my absolute favorite tricks on how to get even more out of your 35mm lens, alright? Argument number one, 35mm is the absolute sweet spot in my opinion. It is wide enough to show the full environment and establish a scene, and it's also tight enough not to distort the edges and show enough details. Also, so many movies are shot in 35mm, and that's why we are so used to it. It's just a classical focal range. It just looks so good. Now, size really matters, and this lens is an absolute beast considering how small it is. In general, most 35mm lenses are really portable and lightweight and not heavy nor bulky. So that is why this is my go-to lens whenever I want to pack really light. Now I want to show you an additional things I love to do with this lens. First one is the macro mode. You can get really close to subjects and then it will magnify things for you. I use it all the time to get an additional angle or an additional level of super high detail, and the quality is awesome and it is super sharp. Let's talk about the price. Now personally, I use the Canon RF 35mm, but it is exactly the same concept if you shoot like Sony or Nikon or whatever, and depending on what type of 35mm you want to pick up, you should expect to pay around like 200 to 500 bucks, I would say. On the lower end you would get like a vintage one or a used one. On the higher price end you would get something like the latest and greatest Canon RF with autofocus and so on. Either are pretty awesome, and I would say I definitely recommend trying out this focal range. Now, before we talk about low light and my favorite aspects about this lens, I want to give a shout out to my friends over at Artlist who made this video possible. If you are like me and love to shoot 35mm focal length and a lot of videos, then it definitely makes sense to get a subscription to a music licensing service. I personally like Artlist because of their cinematic choice of music, and I have been using them for ages before I started partnering with them. So feel free to check them out. If you follow the link below the video, you'll get 2 extra months, which is awesome, okay? As promised, let's talk about low light capabilities. Now, typically 35mm lenses have a really fast aperture, which makes them very good in low light scenarios. So I think particularly for travel photography, that is awesome because I can use the lens during the day for a variety of stuff like landscape, architecture, portraits, and so on. And at night, I don't even need a flash or external lights, which makes it super awesome. And lastly, my absolute favorite trick is turning this lens into a 56mm lens. Now you might say, what? How the hell is this possible? Like the focal range is 35, like how can you make it 56? Hear me out. Most full-frame cameras have an APS-C mode. That means your camera will not use the full sensor, but instead only the inside portion of the sensor and crop in with a factor 1.6. So that means you basically can multiply 35mm with 1.6 and you're basically getting 56mm, which is super powerful on a prime lens. But the downside is that you are losing a stop of light, so either you use it at 35mm f1.8 or 56mm f2.8. Now it's not that big of a deal, and I think it's better than buying like an additional 50mm Nifty 50 in my opinion. Now I made this video because I absolutely love this focal range and the lens is super versatile. However, it's not my goal to convince you to buy a shiny new Canon lens. Always remember, new shiny gear is not always the best investment. If you're switching from a kit lens and thinking about upgrading to a nice all-round lens, then I think it makes a lot of sense. But if you own 3 lenses already, then maybe hold your horses and practice more with your existing gear, or rather invest in other things to level up the production values of your photos and videos. That is why it might make sense getting a subscription to a music licensing service just like Artlist, for example, the same way like I virtually subscribed to Artlist 3 years ago before buying this lens. Their personal plan is one of the best deals out there in my opinion, at only $9.99 US, which gives you access to a boatload of cool music for social media. If you're doing client work, then their commercial plan at only $16 US is also awesome. So go check them out, and big shout out to Artlist for the continued support on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Let's hang out in the future right here if you like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.